Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Kristin Booth Glen, who is the Dean of the City University School of Law. Dean Glen is a graduate of Stanford University, where she majored in political science, and a graduate of Columbia Law School, where she received a Juris Doctor. She became a judge first of the Civil Court, and then a justice of the Supreme Court of the State of New York, and then a justice of the appellate term of the Supreme Court. In 1995, I was chairman of a search committee for City University Law School, and I was delighted to find Judge Glen because, in my opinion, we need to have people with experience in areas like a School of Law. Fortunately, the City University School of Law, which had begun in 1983, and had difficulty with students passing the bar exam. And I wanted Judge Glen to work in that area, and she has done a spectacular job. Today, the City University Law School is at the level of Brooklyn Law School and other law schools in the city. So, Judge, I want to congratulate you, first of all.
Well, thank you so much, except it's really not me, it's the faculty and the staff and the students who did the work. I was just lucky to be there at the right time.
I know, but you had to change the some of the procedures. I know when you went there were no grades, and it was just simply pass or fail. And then over the years, you changed that so that now we have grades, so that students can recognize what's going on. You see, from my point of view, as a lawyer, it seems to me that if you go to law school, that you go there because you want to practice law, and you should be able to pass the bar exam. Now, I know that there are people who are against all tests. They're against tests for lawyers and doctors and everything else, but it's a reality that in this society, if you want to practice law, if you want to be a teacher, you want to be a CPA, as I also am, you have to be able to pass the requisite exam. So I know it's not easy to get that accomplished, but you did it. But tell me about the law school, because it is a most unusual law school, probably one of the most unusual in the country. What makes CUNY Law School different?
Well, there are a number of things. First is our mission. We are the only law school in the country with the explicit mission of training lawyers to practice in the public interest, and with a joint mission, which is, of course, quite consistent with the rest of the City University's mission, to recruit and train lawyers from historically underserved communities. At a time when many people say, aren't there too many lawyers, and why do we need more lawyers? The truth of the matter is that for most people in this country, and this comes from surveys that the American Bar Association, the state bars, the city bars have done, something like 2/3 of all the people in the country who have legal needs don't have lawyers to help them.
Now, what is the public interest? How do you define that?
Well, the public interest, I think, it's very broadly defined, obviously, but for us it's looking at the impact of the law on society as a whole rather than simply furthering the interest of particular clients. And that may occur in representing individual clients, and it may occur in representing clients that aren't actually clients at all, but that are public interest issues like the environment, where you don't, you may necessarily have a person or a group that is the plaintiff, but what you're really looking for is clean water or clean air.
In other words, the lawyers who graduate from CUNY Law School are not going into the big law firms to practice corporate law, but they are going into areas of public service.
Well, they do a variety of things. They go, obviously, to governmental offices, everywhere from the district attorney's offices to the Environmental Protection Administration, the Department of Justice.
The legal aid society.
They go to the private legal aid societies and public defenders' offices. They go to large nonprofits, the Now Legal Defense Fund, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, that kind of place. But what they also do, which is very interesting and which I think we're taking the lead in, is many of them who do come from historically underserved communities go back, often after a stint at the DA's office or in some other agency, and go back and actually open offices in those communities and provide access to justice for people who never had lawyers before.
Oh, I know it's a big problem. When I started to practice law, there was no legal aid, and a lot of my clients I represented pro bono in criminal cases, young people who were in jail, not because they were guilty of any crime, but because they couldn't afford bail.
Right, absolutely.
See, the problem with our criminal justice system is that it penalizes poor people, because if you have even bail of $2,000, people who are poor can't afford it.
Right, absolutely
And
right.
especially because the bail system required some kind of security. It goes back to the old English common law, where you needed to have a deed to provide security. But if you're
a
in the
tenant.
South Bronx or East Harlem, there are no
Right.
private houses,
Right.
so nobody has a
Right.
deed. So
Right.
even a low bail automatically means that the person stays in jail. And then without a lawyer, I represented people who had been in jail for a year, and nobody could understand them because they couldn't speak the language. And so there is a huge need today for lawyers who are willing to work in the neighborhoods and represent poor people.
Well, that's precisely what so many of our graduates do, and it's not just poor people, it's the working poor and lower middle income people who really can't afford most lawyers either. And then I think you hit the nail right on the head, because the language issue is an enormous issue, and part of the beauty of being in the city university is that we are a university of immigrants in a city of immigrants, and our students tend to come from all over the world. Many of them are themselves immigrants or first generation. I think our first year class this year had among its members something like 32 separate languages spoken. And so these are all people who are going to go back to the Bangladeshi community, the Gujarati community, the Estonian community, and provide legal services and give people access to the justice system.
One of the areas that you are focusing on is precisely the area of immigration law, because we have a new immigration into New York City from all over the world, but certainly from Latin America. And that immigration is going to continue, in my opinion, for the next 50 years. And the laws that Congress passes, and I know because I tried at one point to pass an amnesty bill, don't make too much sense, and they give strange authority to the immigration service. So you have developed special service for immigrants. Tell us about that.
Well, we do it in a number of ways. We have a clinic, and I should say, first of all, that we are nationally ranked for our clinical programs. This is hands-on live client representation under very close supervision that all of our third-year students engage in. So we have an immigrants and refugees rights clinic that does a great deal of work around issues of naturalization. We actually work with the CUNY citizenship program and other programs, the Asian American Legal Defense Fund and so forth. It does asylum work at Wackenhut, which is the detention center near Kennedy Airport, because as you know, the immigration law
Yes.
made very, very dramatic changes about the rights of asylees. And we also do a great deal of work through our battered women's clinic with immigrant battered women who are really disadvantaged because so many of them depend for their status on their abusers. And so it's a very complicated set of issues for them to come forward.
Now, you do that with the professors and the students and outside lawyers?
The students actually represent, we run a law office. It's called Main Street Legal Services. The students under a practice rule from the appellate division are permitted to represent clients and do, and then the professors obviously supervise them and try to make a useful learning lesson. There are what we call grand rounds, like in medical school, where the cases are discussed, and obviously there's a great deal of supervision. But for us, it's a combination of the pathway to real practice, because they'll typically finish their clinics at the end of the third year, take the bar, and begin to practice. But it's also a way that we can provide real service to the community.
Tell me, if you could change the immigration laws, what would you recommend to Congress now?
Well, I mean, I believe in free immigration. It seems to me that that's what's made this country great, and the amount of money that we spend and the hardship that we inflict on people as a result of trying to enforce immigration laws, which really are, I think, broken on a daily basis. I think we should just let people come. I think this is the kind of country that it is, and it's what made this country great.
Well, what I found outrageous was that I had supported an amnesty bill, and then ultimately was approved. But the carrying out of the provisions of the amnesty bill was given to the immigration department, which made no sense, because people wouldn't go to immigration, because if they didn't qualify, they would be deported.
Right, they're terrified, of course.
It shows lack of understanding of the problem.
Right. Well, I'm not a big expert on immigration law. Obviously, there are people on my faculty who are, but it's certainly the case that even when something like an amnesty bill occurs, there are a lot of technicalities that people have to go through in order to qualify. And many of them, you know, who don't even have high school educations and who don't speak the language really can't do that without help. So training our graduates to provide these services, even if they're not primarily immigration lawyers, I think is a real service that we're doing to the city.
Tell us now, if people are watching, young people who would like to be lawyers in public service, how would they apply to CUNY Law School?
Well, you could call our admissions office at 718-340-4202, or you could go on the web, or actually you can download the application if you want, which is www.law@mail.cuny.edu.
You're now taking applicants for the September term.
For the September term, although we close applications on March 15th. So.
And what is the tuition?
The tuition is about $6,200 in-state and about $9,000 out-of-state.
That is for people who live in the state.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's cheaper than most any other area.
Oh, it's way cheaper. And one of the benefits, I think, for us and our students is that because they get out of law school with substantially less debt than they would from the privates, where they could run up $100,000 in debt, they have a lot more opportunity to pursue their real aspirations about being lawyers and not to have to take jobs just because they pay enough to pay off their enormous loans.
And do you have a day and evening session too?
We don't have an evening session. We would like very much to have one, but unfortunately, because of our location, it would be virtually impossible for people to get there at 6 o'clock. And you've got to start, I think you know this, you've got to start night school at 6 o'clock so you can get 2 sets of classes in.
And the location is where?
We're in Flushing. We are near the Queens College campus, and we actually have a walkway that connects us, but we're not on the Queens College campus. But we're about 25 minutes by bus from the nearest subway station. So for people who work and have jobs where, you know, maybe they can get off at 5 or 5:30, it really would be hard. We are hoping that sometime in the not too distant future, the law school might be able to be moved to a place that was more accessible to public transportation. And then we would be able to provide that opportunity for people who can't otherwise afford, even at our low tuition. Because many of our students are older. We don't.
Right.
It's the exception of the student who comes right out of college and is 22 years old.
I think they all worked as I worked when I was going
yes,
to law school.
almost all of them do. But many of them have families and they need to continue to work. The accreditor for all law schools is the ABA and says you can only work 20 hours if you're in a full-time program. So for people who really do need to work a full 40 hours to support themselves and their families, night school is the only possibility. And right now, you know, there are 3 night schools in New York, but they're running at $26,000 or $27,000. So that's a pretty big barrier for most folks.
Okay. We'll be back after these announcements.
Imagine not having a home. Imagine being sick, not having a job, not having anyone to turn to. Thousands of people are being helped by the Partnership for the Homeless, but nothing comes free. If you want to help, support the partnership. It's the most effective and economical program of its kind in the country.
Why would 14,000 New Yorkers volunteer for the Partnership for the Homeless? Maybe it makes you feel good to help out in one of their 150 neighborhood shelters. You could visit a family they've helped find a new permanent home, or find your own way to help. Maybe you'd like to feel good too. Call the Partnership and turn someone's life around.
We're back today with Kristin Booth Glen, who is the Dean of the City University School of Law and a former Justice of the New York State Supreme Court. And Judge, one of the things that I found when I graduated from law school, and I started immediately trying cases. In fact, the first case I ever tried was a case of robbery in the first degree, which had a mandatory sentence of 10 to 30 years. And that's pretty rough to try when you have no experience whatsoever. So I found that really law schools do not prepare students for going out to really try this kind of case or any kind of case. But you have developed a system of overcoming that. Tell us about it.
Well, I think you're exactly right. The profession for a long time has said to law schools, you're not training people to be lawyers. You're training them, at some high level of legal analysis, but they don't know how to write a complaint, or they don't know how to pick a jury, or whatever. And in fact, in 1992, the ABA put together a commission that was chaired by Bob McCrate, who was a partner in one of the big Wall Street firms. And they actually identified 10 skills of lawyering, which, in addition to legal analysis and legal research, which most law schools teach, included things like alternative dispute resolution, time management, fact development, client counseling, the things that lawyers really do. Because we are a new school, because we didn't start until 1983, we were able to design a curriculum that incorporated those skills, all 10 lawyering skills that were identified by McCrate, throughout our curriculum, so that when students learn torts or they learn contracts, which they learn pretty much the same way that the same black letter law that other law schools do, they also learn how to write a contract, or how to draft a complaint, or how to counsel a client, and how to collect the facts that are necessary to present a case. And that happens first in what we call lawyering seminars, which everyone takes in the first year. Then in a second-year lawyering seminar around a particular topic which the students choose, which might be anything from international trade to labor arbitration. And then in the third year, live client clinics.
It's the same thing as in the teaching profession. I find that many of the schools of education don't train teachers for what actually goes on in the classroom. And in law schools, students don't learn how to pick a jury and how to cross-examine, and the skills that are important for the day-to-day work, especially because if you are going to go into an underserved community, you begin trying cases right away. I mean, I never would have had a chance to try the kind of case I tried as my first case if it wasn't for the fact that it was a young Puerto Rican kid who had been in jail for over a year, and there was nobody who could understand the language. So for the public service cases, skills, you need especially that kind of training in the law school.
Well, I don't want to suggest that you were probably skirting at the edge of malpractice in taking that case.
Well, the judge, as a matter of fact, the judge did, because what happened was I got a hung jury, and the judge said, you only did this because of the skill of counsel. I said, thank you, Judge, but it's the first case I ever tried. So the judge turned white. He says, young man, do you realize that if this fellow had been convicted, there would be an automatic coram nobis, that is, the case would have had to be tried again because I had no experience. So then he assigned an experienced lawyer to work with me, and the kid was acquitted. But this is what happens when you are sitting in a neighborhood store and people come in. You can't get experienced lawyers, so that the young people who are trying their first case really need a good background in law.
Well, I'm glad that you said so eloquently what I probably would have said less eloquently, and that is that even with all the teaching of lawyering that we do in the law school, and we certainly do more of it than any place else in the country, and people come to study us, and they come from around the world to study what we do. But I think you know from your own experience that you're not a good lawyer the first, second, fifth, whatever year out. And we recognize that for our graduates who go into community-based practices, to the storefronts and the kitchen table practices and the small firms, who don't have the structure of a Justice Department office or a legal services office or a big firm, that they need constant help and counseling. And so we've done something really quite innovative, which we call the Community Legal Resources Network, or CLERN. We've done this in consortium with 3 other law schools, Northeastern, Maryland, and St. Mary's in San Antonio. And this is about developing a model through which law schools can resource and support their graduates in these small community-based practices. To kind of organize, what we've done is created what we call practice groups. So one lawyer can be sitting in the South Bronx, and one lawyer can be sitting in Chinatown, and one lawyer can be sitting in Flushing. But they're connected through the web. There are frequent meetings. We provide mentoring on subjects. We provide technical assistance to help them with their technology. We provide business advice so that they actually learn how to run the business of a law office, and hopefully, by running it efficiently, have more time to devote to clients who can't pay or who can only pay small fees.
Say on the average graduating class, you follow through to see what happens to them, and if so, can you tell me approximately what kind of law they have in fact gone into practice?
Well, I'd say that overall, probably about a quarter of our graduates are in some kind of government job, including district attorneys or attorney general's offices. Probably another quarter are in legal services or legal aid offices. There are some students who go into big firms and do extremely well, but that is, clearly not what we're mostly training them for. And then the vast majority of them, and this is something we're very proud of, do go back and open these small offices in communities that simply didn't have lawyers or didn't have competent lawyers before. And the CLEARN project, we hope at least, makes them more competent lawyers, makes them able to provide more access to justice to underserved communities. And also, we hope, we've just been doing this for 3 years, so we can't tell yet, but we think may very well reduce burnout. It really provides a career choice for people who want to be lawyers, who want to be respected in their communities, who want to wake up in the morning and feel excited about what they're going to do, and go to bed at night feeling that they've made a difference, and who don't need to make $250,000 a year.
Now you have some unusual projects in the law school. Mississippi Project, what is that about?
Well, the Mississippi Project, one of the things that's fabulous about CUNY Law School is that our students are quite spectacular. They're older, many of them have worked, they've been engaged in really interesting kinds of things before they came to law school, and so they have real expectations of what law school should be. And they create projects. The Mississippi Project was created, I think, in 1984 or 85, very early on in the law school, by a number of graduates who were responding to a particular issue that was happening in Mississippi at the time, which was this sort of inexplicable number of prisoners in Mississippi jails, all prisoners of color, it goes without saying, who were hanging themselves, or at least who were reported to be hanging themselves. And there was a call from the civil rights organizations in Mississippi to have people help, and our students organized this project and went down during their spring break in that year and have gone down every year since. The issues are different now. They work with a number of civil rights organizations in Mississippi, doing all kinds of work, employment discrimination work, obviously work around the criminal justice system. They raise their own money to do it. They organize it. They get a fabulous experience. And I think even though our law school is much more practically oriented, less competitive, and a friendlier and more welcoming place than most law schools, students halfway through law school think, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. This isn't really it. So that Mississippi trip for them reminds them of why they've gone to law school, what they'll be able to do with the law when they graduate, and also provides invaluable services to the lawyers in Mississippi, who are, of course, quite understaffed.
One of the more recent fields of law is elder law, because as people get older, they have special problems with the law. And you have developed a whole core to work with that. Tell us about it.
We have. Well, that was a real pleasure for me when I came from the bench, because I had been doing a lot of work around elder issues. And CUNY has a particularly strong clinic in elder law and works with many community organizations in Queens and around the city, both providing actual representation for the elderly, also working a lot with caregivers, caregivers particularly of older adults with Alzheimer's. There are many government benefit issues.
And you have the whole problem of the managed care organizations and getting approval for all of these services, right?
Absolutely. And obviously, a person who is suffering from mild or severe dementia is not capable of wending their way through that system. So a little bit of legal assistance or a little bit of legal assistance to the caretaker really makes a difference in the quality of life.
Now, you've moved up in terms of the students passing the bar exam up to the level of Brooklyn Law School, where I'm a trustee, so I congratulate you. Right. But you still have some way to go. What would you like to see for CUNY Law School?
Well, I'm very satisfied and pleased with our bar pass rate, and I think it also is worth saying that the bar pass rate that gets reported is a first-time bar pass rate. Mm-hmm. And there are students from every school that don't pass it the first time and do pass it the second. And so I think that the overall bar pass rate is something that's, is what we should be talking about. You're right that you need to pass the bar to be a lawyer, so we want every one of our graduates to pass the bar, and basically they do. I'm really proud of what we do, and I think that our focus as we move forward is really fine-tuning focus to try to do better what we already do, to continue to explore ways in which we can help our graduates serve the various communities that they come from and the communities that they don't come from that need lawyers and that need legal services. And this idea of a partnership between the law school and its graduates is something that's quite new, but it's exciting. It's something that there's a lot of energy for and excitement about in legal education, and it's very nice that CUNY is taking the lead and we're getting the recognition for that.
Okay, well, keep it up, and thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cuny.tv, or write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016.